forget the price, whether he overpaid, underpaid. I mean, throughout the course of history, it's been very important to have influence over media. Media creates narratives, and narratives, they start in the intangible, and then it eventually makes its way into tangible real world consequences. And I think this was a really good example of Elon basically having the opportunity to control the narrative himself. Like, had he not owned Twitter, right, or if we didn't have Twitter as a platform in general, right, this BBC reporter could have put any headline he wanted. That would have then been picked up by other news and media outlets who kind of like participate in groupthink, and it would have completely influenced the way in which he was viewed. And maybe in the short term that doesn't seem like a big deal, but over the long term, that kind of comes across in the form of very real policy and other consequences. So I think this interview Elon should do it a lot more. Like, I think this is the whole reason the platform was valuable to him and people like him, and it's why we're lucky that Twitter exists.
I want to go to Alex. Alex, you had a bit of a chat, you and Ian, who will be joining us shortly, and Mars Blog will be joining us in a bit. He's just booking a few flights. First, just a general question before we get specific. What are your thoughts on the interview? What are some highlights worth digging into?
I think definitely the turning point was when, James brought up misinformation and how Elon brought back banned users who were banned for misinformation or hate speech. And then Elon turned the tables on him and said, okay, so who's the arbiter of misinformation? Is it the BBC? And then there was an awkward silence, and then he didn't answer. And he's like, okay, so your experience is that you're seeing more hate speech and misinformation on your feed. Can you define it or whatever? Can you show me examples? And then he's saying things that are like, oh, this verges on misogyny or racism or whatever. And then Elon asks him, do you think those things should be banned then? And then he's like, oh, no, I didn't say that. It's like, okay, you just said that bringing back banned users is causing this, to proliferate on the platform more. And then in the same breath, he's like, oh, well, I don't think they should be banned for it. So where's the issue then? So I think that was really the highlight, because he kind of, retreated after that. And
Would
then,
you I have a question,
yeah.
Alex? I have a quick question. Do you think James and I've got a few questions more specific to Twitter itself, because I know your story and maybe you can kind of link it to your story when it's relevant to the question. But just to kind of finalize James as an interviewer,
Mhm.
do you think James was a good interviewer, but Elon just outsmarted him and outplayed him, or just James was a pretty shit interviewer?
I feel like, well, number one, to give him a little credit, is that it was a kind of a last minute interview, they said. So um, I guess maybe he didn't
Exactly, yeah,
prepare.
fair point.
Yeah, he didn't prepare as much as he should. Because I feel like he would have had, some prepared questions on those points if he was going to bring up misinformation as an issue, how he would have examples that he had seen on his feed. Because then, like I said, he didn't have on hand examples, and then he shifted to, oh, well, I don't use that feed anymore. Well, okay, then he just kind of solves his own problem. If you don't want to see new content that you don't follow, then don't use the For You feed. It's an option. Elon is making and empowering users to make their own decisions on the platform. If you don't want to see something, block them, mute them, or don't use the For You feed if you don't want to, see tweets recommended. And guess what? If the reason he's seeing those is probably because he's engaging or seeking out similar content. If you notice, if I engage with someone I don't disagree with, like Adam Kinzinger or whatever, and I reply to his tweets, I'm going to see similar tweets to that tweet that I engaged with. So it doesn't matter if you agree with the tweet you're engaging with. If you're engaging with it, then Twitter is going to serve it, because they see that you're engaging with that content, so they're going to recommend it. So a lot of that can be stopped by, not interacting with content you claim you don't want to see. But I think it's just, people complaining and acting like it's on the platform, to filter that for the user rather than the user to filter for themselves. That's the point of lists. That's the point of all these additional features that they're creating.
Yeah, well,
And
Trash, before you jump in there, I want to mention this interview was actually scheduled from this morning. James Clayton tweeted out and said, "This morning I asked Elon for an interview about his first 6 months in charge of Twitter." And he said yes.
Hmm.
So the guy had at least 12 hours
Yeah. Okay.
to come up and formulate some of these questions, but couldn't do it. Couldn't find
Man,
any examples of that time.
Nick, I fucking love. I remember Nick, the early days of you jumping on Spaces, and now you're like a fucking journalist, catching on every single detail. Like he
Love that.
actually said he has X number of hours and 28 minutes and 34 seconds, Mario. So that's enough time for any human being. So Slayman, I know you were jumping in with a question to Alex, but Alex, do you mind if I ask one more quick question, Slayman? Okay, I'll take that as yes. Alex, in terms of monetization, I think Elon did touch on that. I think he did, and I could be wrong because I was talking to the team about it 2 hours ago. Have you have a massive following, a lot of engagement, very active on Twitter, and have you had discussions with others? What are your thoughts on the monetization of Twitter? He did talk about ad money kind of flowing back into the platform, which is good for the top line revenue. But in terms of monetization for creators, any thoughts?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that's going to be rolled out, I think they had said in previously, is so everyone who is currently in the subscriptions or has been like approved for subscriptions are going to be the first sort of like testers of. So he had mentioned where if your tweet gets replies and there are ads served in the replies, the original poster will get some revenue from that. So I think that's where they're going to start it. But I know they want to sort of do like mid-roll ads, sort of similar to YouTube on videos. But the problem is that they don't currently have the infrastructure. I don't think for that sort of ads, and I don't think they currently are selling to advertisers that style of ad yet. So I think that's why they're starting with the tweets in timeline ads, because that's what they already have the infrastructure for. But I'm not sure on the timeline of that, but I do know that they had said in the past that the first people eligible will be everyone who is eligible in the subscriptions feature.
Well, and Alex, you were kind of going into a vein, and I think that Elon kind of stopped flat a little bit. But you were talking about, like, one of your first questions that you were talking about was, okay, so like you got legacy checks, and you've got people kind of making the adaptation to the new Twitter, and what kind of like features. Yeah, go ahead. It seemed like you were going somewhere with that when you were asking Elon that question. Do you remember what I was talking about?
Yes. So my question kind of stemmed from, so since there's not going to be legacy blue checks as of 420, my worry is that in the chance that, say, somebody wants to update their profile picture, they're going to lose verification for a period of time. I think it's necessary if they change their profile picture and then name within like a certain time period of each other. I think that would be smart. But if it's just a profile picture and no name change in the last whatever days, I'm not sure the correct number there. I think they should be able to keep their blue check. And my point to him was to ensure that it's not abused. Make people sign on to, say, the year plan or whatever, because then if somebody really wanted to impersonate someone, they'd have to spend $100-something to impersonate someone and then get suspended.
Hey, how's it going?
So